beautiful setting, I must say. As opposed to the podium, which most people are used to, standing behind the lectern and speaking. Here, I'm sitting directly in front of you, and I'm actually finding this a bit difficult in the beginning, because you are not used to giving up your sense of space. But you slowly get used to it, because I think I can connect to you all, and you all can connect to me a bit more, and there's nothing blocking us. And that leads me directly into what I want to talk to you all about today, which is the sense of personal space, which we all know about and are aware of, and which I personally have found to be the biggest difference between life from where I have grown up and life here in the United States. And I'm going to try and give you a few anecdotes from my past to try and explain that to you. Personal space is the space of 1 to 3 feet, and it's not clearly defined as what the exact distance is. So we all come up with our own sense of personal space, and it comes up based on the culture and the surrounding that we grew up in. So here in America, I think we have the greatest sense of personal space because of the less population and the less density. And I think in India, where I come from, we have the least sense of personal space because we have the highest number of people there. So for me, it has been very difficult to adjust to this. So going back to my childhood growing up in India, I came from New Delhi, which is a city with a population of nearly 12 million, a density of 30,000 people per square mile. So it's very, very packed over there. And I grew up in that environment, and people are touching each other all the time. There is a very undefined sense of personal space. It almost doesn't exist. For example, like in school, when I was in high school, I used to walk around with my friends, and we used to all put our arms around each other and just walk around in school. It was very normal and standard to do that. Hold hands, put your arms around each other. Nobody ever thought of it differently about it. 85, I finished my high school in the 80s, and 85 I come to the United States, and I come to Texas, San Antonio, Texas, which is probably the least dense state in the United States. Coming from a city which has a population of 12 million, 30,000 people per square feet, come to San Antonio, Texas, which has 1 million population and 3,000 people per square feet. So it's a 10th or a 12th of the population of where I came from. And I found this initially very shocking to me, that people were not close to you at all. And people wouldn't like it when you came too close to them. And to me, initially when I came here, I used to touch people all the time. I was touching everybody. And I got a lot of negative feedback from people. That, hey, keep your distance. So I slowly started adjusting to this. Then I moved to San Francisco in 1990. And here, also I feel there's a very strong sense of personal space. I think the only people I've seen, I've been living here for almost 15 years now. The only people I see in the city where people violate that sort of personal space is probably in the Castro district. Anywhere else, it's still very much valid. So I've been struggling with myself, trying to see that why is it that this sense of personal space is so difficult for me to accept? Why is it challenging me so much, and why is it that I'm not focusing on the wealth over here, or the poverty over there, or the opportunities here or there? Why is this so important to me? And so I've been struggling with this in my mind, and I've, just like everything else where I need an answer, I usually go to books, because that's where I feel I get the best resolutions to my questions. So I've been reading books and trying to make a connection about this personal space. Why is this so difficult for me to understand and to accept? So reading a lot of books, and I've lately been reading a lot about books on innovation and different ideas and creative thinking, and that's kind of the direction I've been going for. And so one of the books that I have recently read was something called Where Do Good Ideas Come From, by an author called Steve Johnson, who you may have heard or not heard of. So he talks on a totally different level about how ideas, that firstly the concept of an idea is not a singular thing, which is most people seem to think an idea is a singular thing, but it's not. He says ideas are more like a swarm of things coming together. That's an idea. That's when an idea comes together. The different thoughts kind of come together. You come with an idea over time. And it's a very slow-moving process, and through a hunch and over time, it develops into something that you get creative about. I'm like, wow, that's very interesting. And this is sort of in the back of my mind, connecting up to this thing about personal space. And ideas do come from people. So I'm thinking, okay, that's very interesting. And then I read some more about evolution, and I read about Darwin, and Charles Darwin, he goes down to Galapagos, and he discovers over there that most animals, they evolved mostly around the corals, and that 70% of sea life comes out from the corals. So you have lots of variety of life living in a very small defined space. So animals exist a lot in small spaces. Ideas, I mean, there's a lot of variation of animals coming from small space, which is the coral space. A lot of ideas, they really come out in places like cities where people are living very close to each other. And so one of the things that Steve Johnson came up with was that living in cities is where you get the most innovation. And it's usually when ideas are coming together and hitting up with each other. You come up with the most innovation in the closer the people live, and compared to thousands of years and hundreds of years ago, innovation is speeding up right now, and it's coming out most from places where you have people living in cities and clusters close together. So this thinking has got me thinking that, so how about people living close together? What does that do when people are living close together? When people are in fact touching each other and going to, after all, if ideas need to connect with each other to come up with a novel idea, to be innovative, how about when people, from where ideas come from, when we are walking around in this space, if we are living here isolatedly and not touching each other, we are really living like bubbles, in isolated ideas. But when we actually start getting into people's personal space and actually touch each other, something novel starts to happen. And that is what I'm starting to now think about deeply, that this is happening more on the eastern side of the world, where people are connecting with each other, touching each other, and there's a lot more empathy and connectedness and love and understanding of people over there. Over here, while people are innovating with ideas, they're not progressing in terms of connecting with people, in terms of actually making deep personal connections. And this to me is really very fascinating, that this question of personal space, if we can learn to let it go, we will start to do a service to ourselves, to this country and to this community. And I personally, I am very optimistic about this country. I've been here for 25 years, and I feel the next century, this century is going to be an American century. That's personally what I feel. And I feel like the first decade of this century was probably lost in a very meaningful way because of 9/11 and whatever happened. But I feel like we still have 90% of the century still ahead of us. And if we as a community, we as a people can let go of this personal space, we will not only just be the most innovative country, but we'll also be the most loving and connected group of people, and we'll make the best leadership in this world, which I see is going to be happening, provided we make these changes. And this connectedness of the society, I feel it could come from bottom up as well as from top down. Going bottom up, it could go from society, from mothers touching their children more, from kids touching each other in schools and not being called gay or lesbian, but being considered perfectly normal, and from top down as well, where we could have, instead of Department of Homeland Security, we could have a Department of Removal of Personal Space, or something of that nature. But I think it could be top down and bottom up. But I am optimistic about this country being a leader in this coming century, and that we can actually get together and do something about this thing called personal space. Thank you very much.